All right. Welcome to episode 37 of Full Circle. I am, as always, your host, Chad, Cheddar Caveman on all things internet-y. Just double checking the stream. And we actually have quite a bit that I think we should talk about today. Lock and Load was just this past weekend, as you may recall. And there were a lot of nuggets of information that were announced there, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to kind of go through, and also Steamroller was released, and the CID continues. So I'm going to go ahead and talk through. First, we'll start a little bit more generic, and we'll work our way to a bit more circle specific. So let's see where to start. So the keynote this year was fantastic. It occupied nearly an hour of time, I would say. That's what I kind of recall, all told. The videos for all of it, there's some talking they did that I think you have to still go to Twitch to get. And then the videos that they showed as part of the keynote are... except for the intro, I didn't see that, are all available on YouTube on the, I think it's Privateer Press Prime is the name of their account. So take a look there. One of the videos is talks about the theme releases that are coming up. Sadly, there was no information on Circle as part of that. I was kind of hoping that we were one of the next factions, and that's just based on a little bit of history. It's frequently pretty common for us to follow Trollbloods and be a little bit earlier than Legion or Scorn, and Hordes-wise, and usually follow. We sort of follow Signar Arcador in that regard too. So, but that's okay. I mean, it does mean so just something, not to. I tend to try to stay pretty positive, but it does mean that theme release wise, and that doesn't mean theme forces, as we'll talk about in a little while, and it doesn't mean there's a handful of things it does not mean, but what it probably means is we're looking at sometime in 2018, probably spring-ish, I would guess, before we're looking at an actual theme release for Circle. So whether that's Devourer's Host, which is kind of my guess, or if it's something else, I would anticipate that we will not be, will likely not be seeing a full theme until then. Given their release schedules, I mean, we could be on the CID sometime at the end of the year, like right around the first of the year. But then it's if we're going off the timing of the Trenchers one, which was early June, I want to say, or mid-early June. With a release in October, if that gives you, so June, so July, August, September. So it's 3 or 4 months out that they're testing this stuff before the final release. So we could be seeing our stuff not too far down the road as far as going on the CID, but getting a really, there's going to be some other stuff in front of us. So, from a personal level, obviously I just want more and more and more Circle stuff, but be that as it may. So just to gloss over it real quick, the themes that were talked about, Blindwater Congregation, they're finally getting their Dracodile. They talked about the Man-O-War theme was featured lightly, actually, but I do believe it is coming up after Trollbloods. Crix will be getting some pirates, more of the living pirates, along with Scar 3. She's in some kind of giant boat. So they have that to look forward to. Legion will be getting a Blighted Ogryn focused theme, which sounds pretty cool. And I feel like I'm missing a theme. Well, I guess it's the problem is we already have someone else. So Northkin continues, Trenchers continue, Man-O-War, Legion, Blindwater, Crix, and the one I'm forgetting apparently. No Protectorate, no Retribution, no Circle, no Scorn. Basically is no Convergence. is where we're at with that. So those are the themes that are coming up. We'll talk about anything there that is pertinent to what we should be concerned about as Circle players as that comes forward. But that's mostly just news. They also announced a subscription service for alternate sculpts, and those that's at minicrate.com. So basically, you sign up. You can either sign up for 6 months at once, in which case you get a bonus model, or monthly, and it renews. So it's sort of like, if anybody's ever done like Loot Crate, it's like that, except you get models, and these models are things like to give it out, like the Rinny model that was released at Lock and Load. The models will be like that. There'll be alternate sculpts, reimaginings, and they will only be available that time. They're going to create a mold, they're going to create the model, and they're going to destroy the mold after they've created all the ones people have pre-registered for, or prepaid for. So if you like the hobby aspect, or if you just like alternate models, or if you're like one of my locals and you are just crazy and have to have everything, then you can sign up for it. The price is pretty reasonable, I would say. I think it was like $16 or $17 a month, and then if you pay for it all up front, it's like maybe $1 or $2 cheaper, but you get an entire additional model. And that's putting you, I have to do the math on it, but that's going to put you at, I don't know, $12-ish, $13-ish a model. That's pretty good. I'm going to divvy off into a question. I have in the chat, I have a question. What's my guess on what's missing or to come for Circle themes? So there's two pieces to that question. One, and I'll go ahead and jump ahead to this. So one of the things that was announced at Lock and Load is that they have an intention to try by the end of this calendar year to make sure that every model in the game has a has a theme force to call home. That doesn't necessarily mean, I would not liken that to mean that every model will absolutely love every theme they're in, but they will have a place that you could play them. As Privateer has made a statement that themes are the primary way they imagine the game to be played and to lists to be built. I know some people like that, some people don't. We're not going to get into that. They did. It was discussed. There will be a Blackclad focused theme. I don't know if that's new. I assume that was already on the radar somewhere. I don't know if that means, because another bit of news is we heard that I keep wanting to call Bones of Orboros World War because of Brad, I guess, but Bones of Orboros will be on the CID, and I'll get into why on that a little later. So I don't know if the Blackclad theme will be an enhancement of that theme. I sort of hope that it is not, personally. But they did state that there will be a Blackclad theme. So if I've actually looked through all of our faction, the only things currently that don't have a home are the Druid Mistriders, the Druids of Orboros, and Una the Falconer, Una 1. Everything else in the faction has a theme. It can be played somewhere. Some things multiple somewheres, some things not, but everything else has a place. Another thing announced, so we'll just get into talking about the themes, is they're re-looking at themes, and they're trying to make sure characters have a place. So I would anticipate, for example, Megalith gets added to the Bones of Orboros for everybody, much like how Getorix is into Ours Host. I don't know like what theme Brenos might go in, or Loki. I can make some guesses, but they've specifically said Megalith, Bones of Orboros, extremely likely. So that's awesome. They've also stated that by the end of the year that 80 to 90%, or sorry, I shouldn't say by the end of the year, I don't know for sure. As they reimagine theme forces, they're also, and this is the primary way to play, most theme forces are also going to have a clause that will allow you to play a minion, in our case, or mercenary in the War Machine case, solo, and a minion or mercenary unit. Basically, the idea being that this theme may, even though they're maybe estranged from another part of their faction or geographically it doesn't make sense, they will be able to pay for minions. And I think and I talked a lot about that in the last episode. It looks like the battle engine piece is being dropped from that, and I think that's for the best. They're very big, powerful pieces, and they're very iconic to their faction. And I think that's fine. I don't see that as a huge deal. I think there's a lot of applications for this as Circle. We'll have to watch this as it develops, because I think we'll have to take a look. So that's another piece of themes that's getting looked at. To follow up a little bit more on the question from chat, what do I think is missing? And I think that comes twofold. So I already talked about what models aren't covered, but I don't think themes. That's not going to be the end of themes. So there's two divergent directions. They don't really diverge, but there's two directions that goes from there. One is, are there models that I can imagine existing to fit into these themes as a theme release that don't exist? And the answer is, I actually have a hard time doing that. There's so many directions things can go, and one of the things you'll notice, and I am guilty of this as well, is when players start theorizing what something should be, we usually take something else we know in the game and add it to our faction, right? So like Weapon Master. We always want Weapon Master in Circle, right? And we're like, other things have Weapon Master. It'd be awesome if this thing had Weapon Master. And then, we try to make balanced ways to put that in the game. Or more cold attacks or something like that, right? Things that are easy, things we know. And I think that the reason that this game is so cool is that you get things a lot of the times you didn't know you wanted, but you do. And that's really cool. So, if we're looking at like Devourer's Host, I want to see more. I think there's a lot of options there. I think there's a lot of cool stuff. I would say I would love to see a Tharn-centric Warlock who was a little bit more of an infantry caster, since Tharn are almost exclusively infantry. And I think it'd be really neat if that were maybe like a Bloodweaver, a female Tharn-style caster. I know to a degree Morvana's sort of supposed to fit that niche. I know... Chromite 2 does a little bit, Chromite 1 does a little bit, but like, and I use Weapon Master as an example. I absolutely don't see us getting any Weapon Master units like that. Although the Wolf Riders do have Weapon Master at POW 9 now, so I also don't, this is sort of a tangent, but I don't think Weapon Master is, people get a little too crazy about how good Weapon Master is, and they don't do the, sometimes checking the math is good. So, POW 9 Weapon Master on Wolf Riders compared to POW 13 charges on Ravagers. And technically the Ravagers are going to do more damage. Just barely. On average. So, anyways, coming back in. So there's a lot of things that I can imagine. I would like to see more. So the things I would like to see for Devourer's Host are, I would like to take a look at what the Blood Pact does and hopefully get maybe an attachment or solo for them. I would love to see some more ways for us to get and use corpses. I would love to see a Warlock who is more infantry focused, perhaps. Yeah, after that, like, honestly, like, it could go in a lot of directions, and I think all of it would be really neat to see. So, then I'm not going to go through every theme for us and do that. Obviously, more Wolds will enhance that theme. And more stone units potentially. For Wolfsworn, again, I could go into all sorts of directions on what could make that really cool. We don't have Skinwalker solo. We don't have Wolves of Orboros solo at the moment. I don't really know what the future is for that, but it could be really cool. But I don't have a ton of visions for that right now. So that's one thing. The other thing is what themes could exist, right? So the Blackclad theme is a great example, but I could also see us doing something with flying now, right? Like we have Una, and I think there's a lot of possibilities for a theme involving flying units and beasts and things like that. I also think that we don't have this as strong as some other factions. Trollbloods, for the most part, comes to mind, but a big focus on elemental attacks, right? Like the Fulcrum has elemental attacks. I could easily see doing things with existing units to sort of change so that they're a little more elemental, right? Mosar in the desert, right? We could sort of go in a desert direction with some of our releases as well. Really, any little thing that can be sort of blown into its own entity in the faction would be a really cool place to expand. So, anyways, I'm gonna table the rest of that for now, and we'll keep moving forward. So, I talked about themes. I talked about their plans to release more. Talked about the ones that are planned to come out. Talked a little bit about where Megalith will live, and so the next piece to talk about is they announced a hold on one second. Actually, to answer a question in there, take a look at Heart Eater. It actually affects undead as well. Most of Tharn's a huge majority of the abilities of Tharn do not just affect living only anymore. So I would say reevaluate some of what you have seen as far as rules go. Make sure you reread those. But Heart Eater definitely takes corpses now from undead to be consistent with corpse rules elsewhere. Anyways, so I apologize, team. I've been very distracted today. That's because I'm excited about all that things. I like answering questions as they come up. But the other thing they announced is every year around the December, and they will be this year they're calling it the 12 factions of Christmas. Of course, next year Grimkin will be a thing, and 12 may not apply. However, they've said that time of the year, because the way we're looking at this now, and I know they've said basically like one a month ish, we'll be getting a theme for a faction. Realistically, it could be a little bit slower than that, even if I'm doing the math on the calendar correctly, because they also announced that every summer they're going to be, I guess they didn't specifically say summer, but that's my understanding, is that they're going to have a new faction coming out that's Grimkin-esque, not in flavor but in size and scope. So if you figure 2-3 months for that release every year, there are already 12 factions. They're not expanding. There's a few of them that aren't really getting expanded right, so there's more like 11, I think, and then mercenary and minions are sort of unique, but anyways, in December they're going to give every faction something, one release. There will be no parity amongst them whatsoever, from what I could tell, and that makes sense to me. Something they think they need, something that they think is cool, etc. And that video again is up on YouTube for them if you want to go take a look at it. There was some cool stuff in there. I mean, it's showing Trollbloods getting their first non-character reach heavy, which is currently being tested along with their Northkin stuff. A gun mage character with a shotgun is in there. There's some paladin stuff in Protectorate. There's a solo for Crix in there, and so forth. So but to skip ahead, there's a couple warlocks in there for a few factions even too. But to skip ahead to the one we all care about, which is Circle, we are getting a piece called the Wold Wight, W-I-G-H-T, like a ghost, Wold Wight. And it looks like it's basically a Sentry Stone mannequin as a light war beast. But it's a pretty light war beast, in the sense that it's 5 points, so it's like the cheapest light. There's only like 3 lights in the game that cost 5 points, or 2. This might be the 3rd. I don't remember. There's not a lot. It doesn't have very many hit points according to the additional information come out from Privateer Press. It's 14 currently. It is Fury 2, much like our other worlds. I do not know what its weapons are, which is unfortunate. However, we do know 2 rules that it has. One, its Animus costs 1, and it lights itself and any other models within 2 inches of it suffer the continuous fire effect, which is really cool. There's no stopping it. It's not targeted. He goes on fire, and they go on fire. And I'm sure you're about to say, but why are you on fire? Isn't that bad? It would be, and it kind of is. But the other spoiled rule is that it has Fire's Fury, which is a little known rule that exists on the Northkin Fire Eaters. And what it says is the model with Fire's Fury gains +5 armor against fire-based attacks, or fire-based damage, sorry. Additionally, if it is suffering the continuous fire effect, it cannot be knocked down, and it gains boosted attack and damage rolls. And Will Pagani was quoted as saying he was killing everybody with it in playtests. So I don't know. Its aesthetic is a little confusing. If Grimkin had never existed, I probably would never have second guessed it, but looking at it, it looks way more like a Grimkin model than a Circle model. I think once it's painted and we see it and start looking at it with mannequins in mind and stuff, I think it'll look really cool and it'll be fine. But and this is sort of a direction into elemental attacks that we don't have, right? We have the Winter Argus, of course we have the Fulcrum, and we have lots of lightning type attacks with the Krugers and a few other places. But this is really the first beast thing that does fire, so it could be really cool. I don't know if it only has a ranged attack. I don't know if it has a melee attack. 5 points is awesome. Gives us a lot of potential with Bradigus, for example. It's a Wold, so as I said, Bones is going to be getting looked at soon, and the 12 factions of Christmas stuff will be going on the CID next after Troll Bloods are done. So I think they go until like next Wednesday or next Friday, something along those lines. And then history shows they'll probably be about a week off, and then we'll see these guys in action. So it'll be very cool. I'm very excited for the model. I wasn't at first. It took me a little bit to come around, mostly because like I said, I was really hoping to hear more about a theme, but yeah. And then before I go to talk about Bloodweavers in the chat, the other thing that was announced, which is a huge deal, is that we are going to be testing Stoneshapers with a rule that gives +2 strength to Wolds. This is the thing we always thought they would do. This is the thing we've wanted for them to do for a very long time. And this is something that all of a sudden brings basically our entire stable of Wolds up to viability, in my opinion. Megalith going to power 19. Same for the Wold Guardian. Same, the Woldrath goes up to 21, which is respectable for a model of that size, I would say. Even the lowly Watcher going to 14 is not irrelevant whatsoever, and so forth, right? Like, this is a great change. It won't affect the Wold Weird, but frankly, it doesn't need to. It may affect the new piece. I don't know. But I think this is a real big deal. Being FA3 already means it's very comparable at that point to the model in Retribution, the Arcanist that gives +2 strength to their jacks, or +2 damage. I forget, +2 melee damage maybe, may not be strength. Strength is also really handy for power attacks, so that's it doesn't come up obviously nearly as often, but it can and is pretty good. So you know, if you put your Wold Wardens away, you might be able to be testing them soon. Your Wold Guardians, your Megalith. I'm very excited about the change. I've already started sort of thinking through how I want some lists to go. Bradigus is an obvious direction, but I think the Krugers, I think even Wormwood, a few others, Balders, of course. This is going to be a pretty big deal for us. So I'm very excited about the change. I don't really have a ton to talk about with that because it's really obvious how it synergizes. So yeah, so that was the bulk of the news from Lock and Load. I'm going to jump quick into a question. So there seems to be some discussion on the Bloodweavers, and I do believe the only effect on the Blood Weavers that specifies living only is the no, it's not the heal. The heal actually doesn't specify at all. Let's go to the actual rules, shall we? I believe that the AoE also RFPs undead models, because I recalled looking at it when I was thinking about an answer to Ghost Fleet. An RFP is pretty important. And melee damage for right. Don't mind if you hear the random noise off to the side of my personal Warp Husky causing all sorts of nonsense and mayhem. But anyways, Lock and Load was very exciting, and oh, okay, we do have an update. Yeah, I did think that they were that it was living or undead for stuff too. Yeah, in Mark II it was definitely living. The Blood Weavers are very good right now. Yeah, Lock and Load was very exciting. We have the new Steamroller out there. Definitely take a look. The map's changed a little bit. For the most part, it's what we expected. I would say the change to solos being able to control flags and only needing 5 points is massive. Massively, sorry, I'm sort of blank there. Massively benefits our scenario play. I think Wormwood, Kruger, a few others of ours that Druids help this a lot too. Their stock goes up, because I do think that a lot of people were talking about how they felt like scenarios were unwinnable before, and I'm already hearing reports that that is certainly not the case with these changes. Go out and play it. Go out and try it. I've played a few games with it under these rules. I have one on scenario. You're still going to need to do attrition. I don't think you're going to be able to just all the time not be able to do that, but I do think you should be making sure you're playing for every point you can get. And I think you need to watch out for control feats if you're across the table from them, and if you have one, you should be trying to leverage it to get the most out of it that you can. I mean, that's obviously true, but I think you'll get more than originally was thought out of some of those changes. And of course, they've said if there's problems with it that are unforeseen, we have the tools to update it. So, I actually thought I had a little bit more Lock and Load to talk about there. So yeah, we got the 12 factions to Christmas. We got some theme releases. I didn't mention this, but the new faction for next year was announced to be Crucible Guard, and they have tanks apparently. So they're the Order of the Crucible's like offensive faction, I guess. They're like exiled to Ord in the fluff because of Khador taking over, and now they're ready to go back and do some fighting, I guess. So that's what we'll see next year, a la, similar to Grimkin. Yeah. So they were announced. Steamroller was announced. You can go out there. There's a few games that were played. In case you weren't aware, Masters was won by Crix. Dark Host, I believe, new theme, the main theme. And the other event was won. The Iron Gauntlet event was won by Signar player. So, sorry, my audience is a bit distracted at the moment. Okay. Oh yes, this was a good point that was pointed out. So dynamic updates, depending on what you mean by dynamic updates, there was one clarification announced. Privateer Press will not be driving the meta with dynamic updates. And what I mean by that is something is going to have to be Una 2 levels of broken for them to push out a change. And they don't see anything that's out there right now as that. And I know that there's a lot of people who are like Ghost Fleet, Denegra 1, Haley 2, these things are still problems. They've essentially said, we're not changing those. The players and the game need to find ways to handle that. They need to drive those things, and we need to think about it a little bit like we used to back in the day, where if Ghost Fleet's a problem, for example, then we need to have more RFP being brought to tournaments. We need to have more. We need to play into those matchups and figure out how to beat them. So don't look, if you're like, I'm not playing and I hate that blah 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 is not being nerfed, don't expect a nerf to come. I'm not saying that none of them will happen, but they've said, like, Ghost Fleet was specifically mentioned, like, there will be no errata to Ghost Fleet. So take that for what it's worth. That said, dynamic updates in the sense that the things that are going to go into the CID will continue to do so. So, like, trenchers, there was changes that were discussed in there that were announced. Things went up, things went down. I would imagine all of that stuff, or at least the majority of that stuff, will still hit when the trencher release is live. The same thing for the Northkin side. The same thing for future themes. As I said, forgive the husky. To answer another question, and by the way, I love the questions in chat. I often have a pretty quiet night here just talking, and that's fine, but I also like being able to more directly help out. And another question was on, do I ever see Long Leash finding a place in Circle again, perhaps on a non-flying light? Maybe. I think their aim is to be very cautious with that. We can kind of see with Morton Number 2's design that extended control range for Stalkers seems to really be a factor for, like, how her feat was designed, for example. And obviously with Una there was some issues as well. I think you have to really balance the feats, the abilities, how much you're not sacrificing, and go from there. So, like, the Gorehound and Grimkin has it, so they're obviously not afraid to put it on models. But, like, I think they're going to be very careful, right? The Gorehound exists in a faction that is extraordinarily limited, and a lot of testing was done on it. Scarsfell's in Mark 2 had it, and it was, nobody really found that it was that big of a deal. Changed their speed, changed their defensive profile a little bit, and all of a sudden some things have changed. So do I see it happening? Maybe. I think the Moonhound would be if I was to pick a current beast, I'd love to see the Moonhound have it, because I think it's very thematic. He has only 2 POW 11s, 14, 15, speed 6. Like, I think that would be a great beast of our current stable to have that. Yeah, I don't know. I think they will be very cautious before they give it to us. Another question: have I seen the videos from the National Polish Tournament? I was very impressed by the Morvana 2 player. I have not. However, I didn't mention this, but the EU Lock and Load or Privateer Open, I'm not exactly sure what the event is called, but it happened the same weekend. That event was actually won by a Circle player who brought Baldur 2 Double Woldwrath in Bones and brought Una 2 in Devourer's Host. So I am interested to try the Una 2 list actually quite a bit. Mixes a couple things I've liked. As the chat has stated, Scarsfells are still good, and I think that nerf was fine, right? Like, I don't think Scarsfells need to have long leash. I would be interested to see some of the other Griffins. Another Griffin getting it would also probably be fine. The Moonhound just strikes me as the best home for it. And they gave it to the Archidon recently too, so they still clearly seem like they're okay with using it. But yeah, I think Una 2 is still strong. She can still play a pretty good attrition game. Griffins get ramped way up. I mean, their output can be heavy, as much as a heavy. His list was 2 Ravagers with attachments, Blood Trackers, 5 Birds, a Gorax. That might have been it. Oh, a Death Wolves for sure. Yeah, so, and something I like about that list is it really takes advantage of her whole spell list and all of her abilities. So I'm going to be giving that a try probably at some point. Yeah, so I think Morvana 2 is another good place for Devourer's House, though. I imagine that was what they were playing with her. I think the other theme is fine with her too. her feat is still incredibly strong. I think that's the big thing with Morvana too. Yep. Train of thought has not been good this week, team. So the other thing was Grimkin did release on Wednesday and at Lock and Load, so that stuff's out there. If you have interest, go check it out. I have a little bit of it. I'm not looking to play it, at least in the short term, so I'll still be talking about Circle. But it is out there. I may review some of the stuff on it just because I have it at some point, but it'll be down the road a little bit. I'd like to get more of it and chance to get it painted and stuff before I'm too concerned with it. It'll be certainly after War Machine Weekend. The Rotterhorn Griffin is an interesting piece. I actually do still like it. The problem is I haven't really found when I've built lists with it, there are usually other ways I can approach it. So I've actually played, if I rewind a bit, this was pre-nerf Una. What I was playing a lot was 5 Scarsfells and 2 Rotterhorns and Agorix, of course, for the Primal. And the reason being is, one, the Rotterhorn is actually really good at dealing with certain types of infantry. A POW 8 will kill... I'm doing math on the fly here. So basically anything that's under armor 13, you're pretty reliably killing, just without making an attack roll. And over that, you still got a decent chance. And the change to how... Now, okay, I'm going to say some stuff, but I am fully aware that acceleration as an Animus in Mark II was amazing good. That said, if you remove the fact that Animus is incredibly difficult to balance going forward, and probably makes sense that it got removed, if I'm being totally honest, and you look at it, the fact that it can cast its Animus for free just by killing something does put you in a situation where you're more easily able to charge, kill a model, and then blow it up. I understand the thing is, I'm not sure why they decided it needed to be unboostable. I don't think it needs that clause. I think if they just changed that, it would be fine as is. But it did gain a defense in cost of an armor, which I prefer. It gained a speed, which I absolutely prefer. And there's some strong places to play it. Like, you can bring it with Una and put it in a lot of really crazy places, and it will kill infantry. They don't have any infantry? Great. That's the beast you put first on. That's the beast you put first on the target you want to get flank off on, because you know it's not going to do as much damage anyways. It's a great place to start there. So that's where I've liked it. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's for every list. Before we kind of were making excuses like, well, why don't you have a Rotterhorn in that list? Because you have things with magic abilities that you get to do again. And I think there were some really cool interactions, mind you. But they've also sort of tried to put a few of them back, right? Like, the Blackclad has Battle Wizard now. Or sorry, the Blackclad Wayfarer specifically has Battle Wizard, you know, things like that. And then, yes, to compare it to the Razorwing, I have not had that be my experience, although I will admit I've played very few Razorwings. Sorry, the comment was an Amucked Razorwing is better against infantry. They're both good at different types of infantry. Being able to automatically hit is still better than needing to make an attack roll, even if it's boosted. The fact that you have to pay for the Amuck, you have to pay for the trample, is not irrelevant whatsoever. I do like the Razorwing for doing certain things. They both deal with infantry in different ways. Getting those tramples off can be actually very difficult to find. You need a landing zone. You need to be able to get there. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with the Razorwing that it always sounds on paper like it's good, but your medium base doesn't go over that much stuff, and that's something you kind of have to keep in mind. I think it's good. I think I kind of wish that I had more reasons to want to play it. In all honesty, what I would like to see is it has those Wolverine claws, and they're the same POW as the Rotterhorns, you know, the other two birds, like non-Wolverine claws. And I think it would be cool to see those, you know, maybe he has two POW 12s as initials instead of POW 11s or something like that. I think would really put him in a better place. and make him more of the like bruiser, right? So you sort of have the at that point with 2 Pow 12s, it's I think the third attack is still, well, I don't know. So you get it depends on the armor value, but you get 1 more attack out of the Rotterhorn, but 2 of them are at Pow 11 instead of Pow 12. I don't really know how that math plays out. I'm not gonna do it on the fly here. I think the Rotterhorn, if it had boosted damage, like I don't even feel like I'm debating it anymore. It's still a solid piece. I've still played against it here and there. I've played it here and there. It's a niche piece now. I know people don't like to hear that. The faction is very big, and everything can't occupy every role every time. And I'm okay with the Scarsfell being the guy who goes in there and wrecks, puts some damage on stuff and has stealth and has that like defensive aspect. That's kind of why I'd like to see the Razorwing get a little bit more punchy, but keep like not have stealth and things like that. And then the Rotterhorn is very close. What it does is very good. I could certainly make an argument for making, there's little things that could be tweaked to make it just a little bit better. But it's very close. It's very close, and it's very playable. I still think with Una, it's very justified if you wanted to bring it. With some of the other casters, I'd have to think a little bit more about it. And it really depends where the meta is going, because one of the biggest reasons we stopped seeing it was because we stopped seeing dudes, right? If you rewind to when this edition started, we were playing Tanith with 5 Scarsfells and a couple heavies behind it and Primal, so that we could put Primal on all of them and start trading heavily into high armor things with 8-point Griffins. And we could have done basically that same thing in Mark II with them, but we didn't, because that wasn't as valuable as it is now. The rules did change too, and it really helped make it more appealing, but like that gameplay style was still there, and we didn't really take advantage of it. Stealth on a beast was still great. I think Trollbloods are starting to see that with the Night Troll. I'm starting to see pop up here and there in lists now, and I think that makes a lot of sense. It has 3 initials, stealth, 7 points, mat 6. It's with troll buffs available. Like, I think it's kind of gotten a bad rap that I don't know that it deserves. That said, I do think it's just what are you answering your infantry problems with, right? So if I want to play Una 2, I could play her with 10 Griffins, right? Maybe 6 Scarsfells and 2 of each of the other ones. Or I could put a unit in the list, right? Where Hand of Fate might get a little more play, for example. And units are now needed to score certain zones, so I have that advantage going for me. Things like that. And those are things that you want to be thinking about with your list construction. So does that mean the Rotterhorn's bad? Not necessarily. Does that mean you may not find other ways to not, you may find ways that you may find ways, apologies, to do other things so you don't need to use them? Absolutely. But that's true of everything. You only have 75 points plus theme benefits plus War Beast points to work with, and yeah, you're gonna have to make choices. That said, I do want to emphasize, and this is me getting a bit sort of the roll into the end of the episode here. If there are any more quick questions, there'd have to be things I can answer quickly. Please throw them in the chat. But to go on a little bit of a soapbox here for me is, and this showed up on the Facebook group a bit and in some other forum posts that I've seen, and it's not new. But I am noticing a lot of emphasis on people trying to say Privateer needs to change this. It's too good. It's too good. Opponent stuff. This is busted. That's busted. It's too good. It's too good. We can't play into it. It keeps winning events. It's broken. It's broken. It's broken. It's broken. And then, this strategy won't work. That strategy won't work, etc. And I would really like to emphasize that we should be looking for. I like to try to be more on the positive side. That doesn't mean I'm not able to analyze. As you see, I had some suggestions for how things might need to be changed. But what I want to do is solve the problem, ultimately, right? And to solve the problem, the fact that something may not be as good as I want it to be is irrelevant, right? Like, that's not going to solve the problem. I have these tools to work with, and I need to see if it works. And so that's my approach, and I think it's a healthier approach. I'm biased, it's my approach, so, is what it is. But try to think of that. Try not to be relying on Privateer changing stuff. Definitely watch as stuff comes out to see what they're doing with it. But, don't go like, oh, well, if this beast was 2 points less, I would have won that game. Because that's not really, it's not helping you. It's not really helping anything. So try to do your best. When you get an opportunity down the road to give some feedback, give some feedback. But yeah. Question from the chat, and I will do my best with this. Company of Iron, my thoughts come October. I think it's neat. I don't know how much of it I'm going to play. I kind of really do enjoy playing the game at 75 points. They also announced Unbound, so just to bookend both sides there. I tend to focus a lot more on the competitive direction of the game, so 75 point games are a lot of fun to me. Company of Iron I find really interesting because it allows people to collect some things that they may not have, because you only really need I would say 12, 6 to 12 models, depending on how you do it. It also is anything that's another way to use more of your collection is cool. I have not thought about what I would do in Circle if I played it. I haven't really thought much about it all, other than I think it's cool that it's available. Personally, I think I would have preferred them to say they actually were going to give it a little bit of... I'm a little torn, because I think that they should focus mostly on their main game for competition, especially because that's one unique thing they have over the rest of the industry. There are a handful of other competitive skirmish-style games that have a pretty good grip right now that Privateer doesn't have there, and I don't know without a lot of work that they could unseat that, so sort of to try would be a little bit awkward. But on the other hand, not really having it sounds like it's not going to be officially supported at cons. Maybe there'll be Iron Arena for it sounds like, but I feel like things like that happen often sort of become forgotten. So those are my thoughts on Company of Iron. The next con is probably depends. WITC, I'll be there with 2 of my locals playing. That's not really a con. I think it's actually only a single day event this year, which is actually helpful for us. I believe the next convention is likely to be War Machine Weekend for me, just based on geographic access as well as funds. I'm actually in the process of buying a house, which is hopefully going to be closed on very soon, and I'll be moving. So that speaking of which, that might mean I miss a couple, a week here or there for the show. So just so you know. But that's kind of where we're at. The Michigan GT isn't too far away. My wife and I have discussed it a little bit, but if that happens, it'll probably be decided a little later down the road. So, all right. As always, if you have more questions, feel free to hit me up on social media. Feel free to post on this video. Feel free to hit me up elsewhere. I will do my best to answer your question if I can. And I'd like to thank you all for watching. As always, thank my sponsor, Griffin's Roost Painting, griffinsroostpainting.com or Griffin's Roost Painting on Facebook. Check them out. You can see some of the work she's done. Actually, featured in today's No Quarter that was released with the walkthrough of Yuri the Manhunt, or Yuri the Axe. I'm sorry, I don't play Kador, so I forget the name sometimes. Yuri the Axe painting tutorial. So take a look at that. Anyways, if you are interested, throw a message her way. And we will see you all next week, hopefully.